Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's I Love Learning podcast. Chris and I have been talking before we went live, and I think we just came up with a business idea together. I'm super excited to be with Chris Dunn today. Very excited before the holiday to share all he has to inspire us. So, if you don't know Chris, tell everyone who you are and really what you're passionate about.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on, Dr. Gina.
Absolutely.
I am Chris Dunn. I'm the Safety and Compliance Manager for Tucker Freight Lines, based out of Dubuque, Iowa. And I'm really passionate about learning new skills and mentoring and helping people develop their skills as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that before we got on, Chris was telling me like all these different things and all different areas and walks of life that he's been involved in. And it's pretty inspiring. So, is there anyone or anything in particular that really made you feel this passion to help people and what you're doing today?
I've always been kind of like the giver type. And I love learning new things. I've always just kind of had this curious personality. Dating back to when I was a kid, my parents would get upset with me because every time I get like a Christmas present or whatever, a birthday present, and it was like a bicycle or an RC car or a computer or something, I always tear into it because I was always curious on how things work. So, that kind of translated into my career side too, and how does this position work, and really wanting to know the why on it, everything. So I enjoy learning as much as I can about everything there is out there,
Yeah.
that interests me, and I like to instill that passion in people that either work for me or work with me as well.
That's awesome. So I know you've had a lot of different experiences throughout your life. Has there been one moment or one thing that you can pinpoint that was a real powerful inspiration for you and really was foundational in making you who you are and your thinking today?
Sure. I think it was probably when I joined the military and I went off to basic training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I joined at an early age, so I actually signed the papers and I had to get my parents' permission when I was 17. That way, I could ship off before I turned 18, ship off to basic training. So that was
Mm-hmm.
immediately after after my high school graduation. I left, and I wasn't that great of a student growing up. I was a
Mm-hmm.
terrible test taker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so again, I think that in grade school, depending on where it is in the country, I grew up in a rural farm town with mostly blue
Mm-hmm.
collar. Um, you have that style of education. It might lack in other places around the country. So when you go to basic training, you're just thrown in there with people from all over the country that have
Mm-hmm.
had different experiences with their prior education. So it was really the drill sergeant's job to make sure everybody learned at the same pace and understood things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet that obviously was a really impactful experience for you. Was there anything around that experience, or maybe in other experiences that you have had, that left an impact on kind of your thinking?
Yeah, a lot of it was that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was being a little more analytical with things and thinking outside the box. So a lot of the exercises they did during basic training um, involved that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's kind of what sparked that interest in me wanting to learn new
Yeah.
skills, because I learned different ways of solving problems.
Yeah. That is awesome. So being able to solve problems. So Chris, tell the audience a little bit about some of the problems that you've solved and kind of like in the different experiences that you've had in your career. Like I know you told me earlier, this is where our business idea came in. That Chris is actually a chef too, so he has a lot of different experiences. So can you share some of those?
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I started off really early, joining the military, so I did that, and then I decided not to stick it out and do the whole 20-year thing. I wanted
Uh-huh.
to get out, experience the civilian life, I guess you would say.
Hmm.
And I jumped into working in retail, just as a kind of a filler to decide whether I wanted to go to college or trade school or anything like that. So with that, I became a loss prevention manager in retail, and that was there was a lot of problem solving then.
Yeah.
I received very little training. I was kind
Wow.
of in the position because the prior manager retired, so nobody else in the in the store knew how to operate in that capacity in that position.
Hmm.
Um, During that, I decided to get a part time job in a restaurant, which I've always kind of had a part time job in a restaurant.
Hmm.
I started when I was 13 as a dishwasher, learned some stuff from on the line from the chefs that worked there. And it turned out that store that I worked at ended up closing their doors. So I decided to go full on into the service industry because I was already in part time. Uh,
Yeah.
Worked, transitioned to a bartender, became the bar manager. Um, and then I took over as a general manager for another restaurant, and then went over to the kitchen side, became a kitchen manager, and realized that this kitchen was they had a lot of waste, so I had to figure out food costs and things like that. And
Wow.
I think that helped with really inspired me to become a chef because I had to cut costs a lot. In the restaurant industry, you want your food costs to be about 33% or less, like 33%
Yeah.
is the
Okay.
maximum, and their
Hmm.
food costs were up in the 60s and 70s. So without completely changing the menu, you had to figure out how to keep it, but cut out what you were ordering, and then develop new recipes and menu items with what you had to work with.
Wow. Yeah. So much problem solving. I mean, it's interesting. You've just evolved in your thinking and your skills and what you've done and accomplished throughout your career so far, just by this nature of being, it sounds like, Chris, like really having a willingness to learn and not being scared to do something you might not know kind of the skills or what you need to know. So that is outstanding. That's something that I think a lot of people struggle with is taking that leap to try something new. We're going to be going into a new year here in 2024, so I think that's really an important takeaway. Don't be afraid to try new things. Throughout
Absolutely.
those experiences, Chris, what did authentic learning look like to you? Like, what does that word mean to you? I mean, you were in the military, so you probably have a very vivid and very like specific meaning what that is to you as well.
Yeah. So authentic learning to me is really it's about catching the attention of your audience and the engagement of it. You have to be engaged. You have to have their attention. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to train somebody, to teach them something new. Um, and that's where no disrespect to growing up and some of the teachers that I had, in the grade school levels, but I felt like a lot of them, just didn't catch the attention of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. And I think that's why they've had some reform and in education and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's where again, going to basic training, like I said, I found new ways to learn things, and I was engaged, and a lot of it too is just natural curiosity. Like I said, I've always been a curious person
Yeah.
and want to know how things work, and that's one of the greatest things about um, today and having a cell phone. I mean, I heard that you have more computing power in your pocket than NASA did with the lunar landing, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
so just having a curiosity every time, I'm driving down the road, I'm like, oh, what is this? Or, going on a hike and want to know what kind of tree this is or plant this is, I can just whip out my phone and research it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with AI now and different features, you can pretty much you have content at your fingertips. And I say this a lot, content generation is going to be one of very many. And that's not true learning. Really, what you're talking about in authenticity is really making that human connection to be able to get somebody's attention. Those teachers, it seemed like, didn't really connect with you. And you mentioned struggling with tests and, having those hurdles. And really, I mean, a lot of times when people have learning hurdles like that, they give up, Chris, and you didn't give up. I mean, you're a real champion in that way. You just kept fighting and doing it and just making a better life for yourself. And I can really admire that about you. So I really can appreciate that. Is there a time that you can talk to or share with the audience that maybe you had a specific learning hurdle, or maybe you helped one of the drivers or somebody in your life overcome a learning hurdle? Like, what did that look like? And then how did you overcome, or how did you help somebody overcome that hurdle? Because a lot of people struggle with this and they can't seem to really make it over that hurdle.
Sure. I think you said it best, is that it's just stepping out of that comfort zone, right? I've Whether it's a friend that I've helped, or a colleague, or somebody that I've hired or something, it is stepping out of your comfort zone, and I believe that's the first step to growth, is just getting that step forward. So being able to share my experiences with them, being transparent and honest, and it might get harder before it gets better, but it will get better as long as you stay focused and have that drive to learn and ask questions.
Yeah.
And just going through my past experiences and the people that have worked for me in some of these industries where I was at a management level, being able to share that passion that I have, and seeing them adopt that passion as well when they came in without any experience as well was great. So that's one of the best things there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's a real privilege when you're able to take your own passion and help other people kind of see that and realize that, and be able to adapt that to make a better life for themselves. Because really, learning in general, like you have through your whole life, through the military, through being a handyman, I got to get some tips from you on that. Working in retail and overcoming all these experiences that you have continued to help you grow to where you are today. And as you said before, helping someone realize that this learning doesn't stop. It's not going to stop in just end of December 2023. You're going to continue to learn. And I think that's so important, because it makes you happy, and it allows you to help give other people the passion to want to do what's best for their lives. Chris, I often have people reach out to me and they tell me, Gina, you know what? I've really just lost my passion. I don't know how to get it back, or I don't know how to make the next step. I know you work with a lot of individuals in different levels and employees and drivers. What would you say to someone that might be listening, or maybe somebody at your organization that has lost their passion and says, I really lost my passion to learn? How would you help them overcome that? Or what would you say to them?
So what I feel that has worked a lot for me in the past is, it might sound counterintuitive or counterproductive, is to disengage for a little bit. Disengage, find yourself. I think traveling and seeing new things is the best form of growth and learning. Taking yourself out of your comfort zone, and then just maybe applying yourself to a new skill that you never thought you would have done before.
That's a great idea.
That kind of sparks that whole learning process and the passion again.
Exactly. Like, look around, maybe dig really deep within and find what is that's going to spark your soul. What's going to be the next step that you want to look into? And I think it's critical, like you said, is not being afraid to take the next step. That's something that you've done. You could write a book on, Chris, like every time that you've stepped into a new position or new career, kind of like, what did that look like? What were the challenges, and how you overcame that to further your growth? So absolutely continuing to go out and see the world. And if you're feeling like, you can't even get out of bed, I mean, it's just a matter of just go outside. I mean, just the fresh air and the sunshine, the first moments of the day can really help you. That's awesome. Absolutely. So Chris, what else do you want to tell the audience today? What kind of message would you like to leave with them as we enter into the final days before the holiday and the end of the year?
It seems like the years are just going by faster and faster, and it's January here in a week, and then the next thing we know, it's going to be Thanksgiving again. So, just really, taking the time to disconnect sometimes, to learn a new skill, and to not take for granted how much information we have at our fingertips, and learning new things is just so paramount to growth, to personal growth. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of slowdown.
Yeah. So let's all slow down, turn off our phones, and take a break. And we will be back next week. Chris, if somebody wants to reach out, how can they find you?
Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn. My last name only has one N, so it's DUN, and it's a big mistake. So I'm on there, and just shoot me a message.
Awesome. Connect with Chris. He's an outstanding human being, very, very agreeable to connect, and a very passionate and wants to help. Thank you, Chris, so much for being on my podcast. I appreciate you, and I look forward to more collaboration in 2024.
Sounds good. Thank you. Happy